All right, let's step into the shadows for a bit. Today, we're going to break down the anatomy of fear itself. What makes a horror story work? What really gets under our skin? And to figure that out, we have to start with a really basic question. I mean, think about it, right? It's kind of weird. We spend most of our lives trying to be safe and comfortable, and then we actively seek out stories that are designed to do the exact opposite. We'll happily sit in a dark room and watch something that's meant to terrify us. So, what is that all about? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we're going to dig into 5 incredible and incredibly popular animated horror stories from the Hindi YouTube channel Kuni Monday. Now, we're not just going to retell these stories, we're going to pull them apart piece by piece to really understand the patterns and the psychological tricks that make them so darn effective. Okay, so the first pattern you see again and again is how these stories twist the whole idea of a journey. So many of them start with something we can all relate to, right? The desire to get away, go on a vacation, celebrate something. But that feeling of hope, that's just the setup for the trap. And you can really see that sharp contrast right here. On the left, you've got these symbols of freedom and fun, anniversaries, road trips, vacations. But the horror comes from how that hope gets twisted into the nightmare you see on the right. The very road that was supposed to be your escape, it becomes your prison. And that leads us to the real engine of these stories, the inescapable supernatural loop. See, it's not enough for something scary to just happen. The real gut-punching terror comes when the characters finally realize that there is absolutely no way out. So, in one story, you've got this family driving home at night, and they pass a road sign. It's just a normal sign, right? It says, Delhi, 280 kilometers. Nothing weird about that. But then, after driving for a good 15 minutes, they see the exact same sign again. And then, as the narrator says here, a little later I saw that sign for the 3rd time. And that's the moment. That's when the dread really starts to sink in. Logic is completely breaking down. They're driving, they're burning gas, but they're not going anywhere. They are caught. And this is where it gets brilliant, because modern technology gets turned against them. The guy pulls out his phone, his one connection to the rational world, and the GPS confirms the impossible. As the quote says, according to the maps, our car was stationary. Technology isn't the rescue party. It's just another voice confirming that they're completely and utterly trapped. And these traps aren't just about being stuck in a place. They can also be about being stuck in time. So you have these hikers who get trapped in a creepy old visitor center. At 6:45 p.m., the terror starts. They're hunted down, they're killed, and then they wake up. It's 6:45 p.m. again. The loop resets, and they're forced to relive their own gruesome deaths, over and over and over. So you have to wonder, why them? Why are these specific people being tormented? Well, a key ingredient in these stories is that the horror is rarely ever random. The supernatural forces, the monsters, they often feel like agents of some kind of twisted moral justice, targeting people for their flaws. Take this story about an 11-year-old kid named Sam. He's a genius, but he's also arrogant and a real bully to the other kids. So, on Christmas Eve, he's waiting up for Santa Claus, but he doesn't get Santa. He gets Krampus, Santa's dark, demonic counterpart, who shows up specifically to punish naughty children. See? The monster wasn't random. It was a direct consequence of his own actions. And we see this exact same pattern of crime and punishment pop up in another story. Here, you've got 3 friends on a trip who ignore all the warnings and go into this notoriously haunted cemetery. And they don't just go in. They mock the graves, they take selfies, total disrespect. So what's their punishment? They get dragged into this horrifying shared nightmare, tormented by the same spirits they were just laughing at. They basically invited the horror right in. But sometimes the punishment is a lot more psychological. One story brings up this idea of a chalava, which is basically a supernatural illusion, a deception. A group of friends drives into this thick, mysterious fog. The driver warns them, whatever you do, don't open the windows. Of course, someone does, and reality just shatters. The fog creates this chalava, an illusion that separates them and attacks them with visions. It turns their own minds into a weapon against them. So what about the ones who actually manage to get away? You'd think that's the happy ending, right? This is where these stories get truly chilling. In this world, surviving the monster doesn't mean you've won. In fact, it's usually just the beginning of a completely different kind of horror story. Just look at the fates of the lucky ones who made it out. The guy who escaped the fog, he has a permanent mental breakdown. The woman from the haunted road trip, she's haunted for the rest of her life by visions of this giant shadow creature. The little boy who met Krampus tries to be good, but he's still terrorized by the memory forever. For every single one of these survivors, the monster might be gone, but the trauma, the memory, that becomes a scar that never, ever heals. So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? Across all 5 of these viral stories, the number of people who get a clean, happy ending is exactly 0. A big fat 0. And that's intentional. The goal here isn't to make you feel relieved at the end, it's to leave you with this lingering sense of deep unease. And all of this leaves us with one last, haunting question to chew on. These stories all seem to suggest that the true horror isn't really the creature lurking in the dark, it's the mark that it leaves behind, the memory that you cannot ever outrun. So what's the real horror? Is it the monster you escape, or is it the memory that you can't? Thanks for digging into this with us.